Well, more losses at Sprint. The losses are widening. Apparently part of that is some charges. We got Greg Bensinger, also of Dow Jones Newswire, coming on to tell us about this. Tell us about it.
Sure. Well, Sprint had a big loss. It's one in a series of losses. In this case, it's a little more interesting because they had the iPhone for the first time. And people were really hoping that it would help drive more revenue and potentially drive up profits, but once again in the red.
But didn't they telegraph that they were going to take some losses initially for the iPhone, because you have to pay, the carrier has to pay a subsidy, right, for the new customers?
Absolutely, yeah. There's a big expense up front to getting these customers, and so investors are trying to weigh whether this expense is going to pay off in the long run. Are they going to bring in more revenue, these new customers, over time?
Didn't Sprint, forgive me if I'm wrong, didn't they commit to buy something like 30 million iPhones from Apple ahead of time? I mean, that's a lot of iPhones. Is that part of the charge here, or is that in addition to this charge?
And they only sold 1.8 million. So does that mean that they overestimated?
Well, sort of the way to think about it is, it's a 4-year commitment for $15.5 billion to Apple, and however you want to calculate what an iPhone is worth, $600 to maybe $650. Sprint actually could do this, but it'll be challenging. They'll have to sell 2 million a quarter, like they've done, consistently over the next 3 to 4 years to meet Apple's commitment. So it's a serious commitment, and they got to hope to have this sort of consistent sales of iPhones every quarter.
What do you think, Julia? Julie's looking skeptical here. There's the skeptical Julia eye there. Oh.
Well, it's a big bet. I mean, I could see doing this for 1 year, but for a 4-year, for such a huge volume of phones, and obviously the iPhone is still the smartphone to beat. So it's not like you can see anyone overtaking it right away, but you could in a couple
It's not
years.
like a razor, or it's not like they're trying to sell millions of razors or something like that. Yeah. So, I mean, is this what Sprint really had to do? They did have to kind of bet the farm to get out of their mess, and so they've done it. And it's like,
well, it seems they really had to get the iPhone.
Put it all on red.
What they were discovering is people were leaving them for other carriers because of the iPhone, and the iPhone only. So they had to do something. This is the deal they struck with Apple, and only time will tell whether it really pays off in the end, but they had to do something.
So the losses widened, but when you back out that charge, it doesn't seem they were quite as bad as the investors on Wall Street were expecting. Is that right? Am I doing my mathematics right?
Yeah, they actually were ahead of expectations. Their loss was smaller than Wall Street was expecting. So.
And nobody ever manages those expectations at all. I've heard that.
you heard that.
That was sarcastic, by the way, audience.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm sure everybody knew that, Julia. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Greg Bensinger.